I've always been a bit of a purist when it comes to retro gaming. If you ask me, there's nothing that matches the feeling of playing a real copy of a game on the OG hardware. Unfortunately, retro gaming has become increasingly more expensive as games become harder to find. This makes it difficult, if not impossible, to play some of the best old school games. Yeah, sure, you can always emulate, but I've never been impressed with the results or how fiddly emulation can be. This is why flash cartridges are the perfect solution. They provide a similar level of convenience, but by allowing you to use your original console, you can avoid much of the hassle while still getting an authentic experience. I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to using flash cards, so when I picked up a couple for my Mega Drive and N64 in late 2019, the learning curve was kind of steep. Knowing which model to buy and how to get the most out of them shouldn't be complicated though, which is why I've put together this buyer's guide and getting started tutorial. If you're thinking about jumping into the world of flash carts, or maybe you've just picked one up, then this video is definitely for you. Oh, and as usual, timestamps and links for everything I mention are in the description. If you're yet to buy a flash cart and need a crash course on what they do and why you might want one, then here's a brief overview. Flash carts allow you to play games that have been stored on a memory card, such as an SD card on an original console. Because game files, which are called ROMs, are typically small, you can store lots of games on the one memory card. I have the entire N64 collection on a single 8GB card, for example. Flash carts will allow you to play games from other regions, as well as ROM hacks and homebrew software such as the 240p test utility. They work in a similar way to an official cartridge, and your console will play the game as if it was the real deal. This is an important distinction to make to emulation. Emulators are designed to replicate the experience of playing game ROMs using software. This can be useful if you want to play games from a particular system's library but you don't own the console. The downside with emulation is that so far there isn't one that can play ROMs with 100% accuracy. This can result in games not playing exactly like they should, or worst case scenario, not playing at all. There are a number of reasons why you might want to own a flash card. Probably the most obvious is that they provide an inexpensive and convenient way to play most games from a particular system's library. This includes games from other regions, and specifically games that were never released outside of Japan. There's a strong community of enthusiasts who are constantly releasing translations and other useful patches, making foreign games accessible to Western audiences. Flash carts are also a great way to try out games that you're considering collecting, and they're an excellent way to play homebrew titles and crazy ROM hacks like Bruce Lee and Streets of Rage. Yeah, that's just as awesome as it sounds. On top of this, they can help reduce wear and tear on your original hardware because you don't need to swap out cartridges every time you change games. In fact, they have so many uses that I really can't think of a reason not to own one. If you want to get the most out of your old systems, then having a flash cart is essential. Once you've decided that a flash cart is what you want, the next step is choosing the right one. There are a number of people making these, such as Krikzz and Terra Onion. I chose to go with Krikzz Everdrives for both my Mega Drive and N64. These can be a little pricey depending on the model, but it's definitely worth paying extra because they're well built and very well supported. They also come with a 12-month warranty and they're extensively tested, so it's unlikely they'll damage your system, which can't be said of the cheap knockoffs like my mate Dave has. Some other reasons to steer clear of imitations are slower load times, limited lifespans, and being unstable, such as losing game saves or corrupting data. Next, you need to figure out which model to choose. This really comes down to what you want to do with it. If you just want to play games, then the entry-level models will probably do everything you need. All Everdrives have excellent game compatibility, including those from other regions. If you want to play games from any region with minimal hassle though, you'll want to pick a model which has the hardware Mega Key, such as the Mega Everdrive X5. There are a couple of exceptions in regards to compatibility though. The Super Nintendo, for example, has a number of titles that have different chips inside the cartridges that the game requires to play, such as Star Fox. So if you want to access every game in the SNES library, you need the top of the range option. This is the FX Pax Pro, previously called the SD2SNES. Outside of game compatibility, the more expensive models also have additional features, such as being able to save games. Some models even have USB ports, so if development tickles your fancy, there's even options for that too. I'm not going to cover the options for every console in detail because that would take a really long time, but more importantly, My Life in Gaming has already made that video. I've stuck a link in the description if you want to check it out, but I'd also recommend checking out either Krikzz's website or the Stone Age Gamer website to compare the different Everdrive models. Okay, so you've taken the plunge. Now, how do you actually use it? There are manuals for the Everdrive range available to download for free from Krikz's website. They're generally concise and definitely worth reading through to familiarize yourself with what's possible. They're also a good place to start because they answer many of the common questions. The first thing you need to do is format your memory card. Some Everdrives support a couple of different formats, but others like the Everdrive 64 require FAT32. Once formatted, you'll need to install the Everdrive operating system onto it. If you've purchased the memory card from Stone Age Gamers, the OS might already be installed, but if it isn't, you can download it for free from Krikz's website. Krikzz periodically updates this too, so definitely check back every now and then to see if there's an update. To install, just unzip the file and copy the contents onto your memory card. That's literally all you have to do. With the OS installed, you can start adding games. I've organized mine by region and then alphabetically, but you can use whatever system you like. I don't know if there's a limit to the number of folders you can nest, but you can simply dump all the ROMs into the root without any folders if you don't give a shit. Krikzz recommends that you separate your games into folders though, because this will keep load times to a minimum. Another tip is to not completely fill up the memory card. The Everdrive requires at least 10% of free space to function properly. Game ROMs are often compressed into archive files such as zip or RAR, and these will need to be unzipped before copying them to your memory card. ROM files have different extensions depending on the system. The Mega Drive and Genesis, for example, are bin files, N64 games are Z64, and Super Nintendo are SMC. If the ROM isn't playing, just check that you have the correct format. I had a bunch of N64 ROMs that needed to be unzipped before I could access the Z64 files. When you pop the Everdrive cartridge into your console and boot it up, you'll be presented with the Everdrive menu. This will display your games in the same folder system you put on the memory card. If your folders look all jumbled up, most Everdrives contain an option to organize them alphabetically. Playing a game is as simple as navigating to the game file you want to play, selecting it and choosing Select and Start. The game should only take a few seconds to load, give or take depending on the system. If it doesn't play, then most of the time it's because the ROM is from a different region. It could also be that you have a dodgy ROM file. So how do you play games from other regions? There are a number of games that are region free, and these will work on any system. Some games will display a message, which is a clear indication they're region locked, but other games will only show a blank screen. The Everdrive OS has built-in region patches which can unlock some games, but it's not as effective as the models which have the hardware mega key. Thankfully, most Everdrives include the ability to input Game Genie codes, and many games use the same universal codes. To use a Game Genie code, select the game and then select Cheats. Enter the region code and then go back and choose Select and Start to run the game with the code. And bada bing bada boom, you can now play NTSC games on PAL systems and vice versa. Just be aware that due to the differences between NTSC and PAL frame rates, playing games from different regions might have some timing issues. PAL, for example, runs at a slightly slower frame rate, which can make NTSC games feel a little bit sluggish. Beyond playing games from other regions, you can input Game Genie and Action Replay cheat codes. Most games have at least one, with many having loads to play around with, so it's definitely worth checking out sites like Game FAQs to see what's available. To use a cheat is exactly the same process as using a region code. Some games require that you use a master code as well though, so if the code doesn't work or you get a weird red screen like this, you're probably missing the master code. When you enter a cheat code for a game, the Everdrive will create a text file with the name of the corresponding game in a folder called text. This means the next time you go to play the game, the cheat will be saved and ready to use. To make life easier, you can manually create these text files on a computer, so you don't have to enter the codes using a controller. Creating text files is super easy. Simply create the new text file with the same name as the game ROM for each game you want to store cheats for. Add cheat codes on a separate line or separate them with a comma and save the file in the text folder. When you select the game and then select cheats, your cheat codes will be available. You can toggle cheats on and off too, so there's no need to remove codes from the text file if you want to disable them. So that covers the fundamentals of buying and using flash carts. There's loads of other cool shit you can do with them that I haven't mentioned, and if you're willing to spend a bit more, there are even flash carts that operate a bit like hardware add-ons. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but hopefully you found this helpful. If you have any questions, I'll of course do my best to answer them, and if you want to drop the names of some kick-ass ROM hacks below, I'm sure they'll be greatly appreciated. Anyway, thanks for watching.